Hello and welcome to OPA GCC Sociology, and this is really just wrapping up um, most of the content now for the family unit. It's just going and recapping, coming full circle with what the different theories think about conjugal roles. So just for the do now, just give yourself a moment, just see if you can remember what we mean by conjugal roles, and then try and identify the difference between separate and joint conjugal roles. And then just as a bonus there, a stretch and challenge, how are joint conjugal roles different from the symmetrical family? Okay, so just pause the video, give yourself a couple of minutes, and we'll go over that. Right, so conjugal roles, so the roles typically associated with male and female partners, and that's within the family. And there's two different types. So in answer number two, separate conjugal roles are domestic tasks generally based on the breadwinner housewife. So they're separated by gender. And then joint conjugal roles are when domestic responsibilities and childcare are shared. And then the difference there between joint conjugal roles and the symmetrical family. So the joint conjugal roles implies roles are equal and by are more equal by being the same, whereas symmetrical family is more equal but not necessarily the same shared roles. That's actually the other way around. Right. So we're going to just jump bit by bit, go over each theory. So the main point of this, if you feel you know different theoretical perspectives, then this might seem a bit pointless to you, this video, and you can end it there. Use it by all means as a recap, but it's really there to add in just so you've got, for those people trying to get that that 10 to 12 marks in that 12 marker, that top bracket, just giving you a strengths and a weakness, sort of an evaluated point essentially for each theory. So you got the functionalists on one side with conjugal roles. So you've got essentially them saying that conjugal roles serve a good purpose. Sort of the traditional functionalist, that is. So you'll have traditional functionalists saying, yeah, separate conjugal roles are good because they're based on biological differences. So you have people like Parsons with the primary socialization or sex role theory talking about that. So women are made to be housewives, and the expressive role, whereas men are made to be breadwinners in the instrumental role. You would say sort of neo-functionalists are leaning more towards people like Wilmot and Young that we've looked at. It may not be on here, but people like Wilmot and Young that we've looked at, the more modern functionalists say that joint conjugal roles are good and that we're moving towards that. Okay, so just some points there. I would make sure you get these down. So you've got people like Charles Murray there with the new right who would support that idea, saying that if there is anything alternative to the nuclear family with these gender-based role allocations, that dysfunction can happen in the family. So Murray points to the fact that many in the underclass, it's an extreme example, but many in the underclass lack a male role model, things like that. And it also acknowledges the importance of primary socialization. Some of the issues, though, it assumes there's no family dysfunction within the nuclear family, so it neglects to acknowledge things like domestic violence within the nuclear family. People like Chill say that and back that says functional relationships can result into dysfunction if it's assumed. As well, the functionists are sort of seen as not being the most representative, only presenting the perspective of sort of 1950s suburban America. It's not the most representative thing. It can be quite dated. and it fails to consider the significance of diverse family types in being functional. So I'll just leave that on there. Ideally, you want maybe one strength, one weakness there, just to highlight. Right, so the next one, there's not really much that the Marxists talk about in the way of conjugal roles, as I've sort of highlighted previously, but just to go over it. So they say that conjugal roles reflects capitalist oppression, and any issues that come out of a family is a reflection of them essentially absorbing the stress of capitalism, being victims of capitalism, and this stress and exploitation being passed on. So whether that be in terms of abuse or whether it be unpaid labour of women at home, all benefit the capitalist system. And Zaretsky, it's not a linked point, but just to say you have something there. So Zaretsky's unit of consumption, just this idea that the family is always about money and consumption. Okay, so just to go over some strengths and weaknesses. So they do highlight class inequality and how things like the family can reinforce this class inequality through things like inheritance, but they fail to consider family diversity in terms of, it's not that they don't value it, it's just they don't acknowledge it in terms of, they don't talk about it that much. They're so honed in talking about critiquing the nuclear family. They ignore things like gender inequality. You do have some Marxist feminists, but overall, it's all, the main caveat is about capitalism. It fails to consider other reasons for inheritance. It fails to consider that social mobility within the family can work, and it ignores other reasons why people get married. So it's arguably being too deterministic about the family as a structure. It's not all about money and capitalism. So moving on, we've got the last theory, feminist theory. So it all reflects patriarchal oppression. So it could be in terms of economic exploitation, so men earning more and getting better jobs because women are expected to look after the family. But it's also this idea of culturally as well, cultural oppression. It assumes that women should be submissive to men. So whether that be working their days around their husbands, coming home from work, or just, sacrificing themselves. And then you've got the iconic quote. So Oakley says, "Women are the takers of poo," essentially. And you've got a stat here: the Institute of Public Policy, only 1 in 10 men in a marriage complete the same amount of domestic chores as women on average. Women conduct 14 hours of domestic chores a week. So it just gives you this scale, this idea of how much women are taking on more. They may have more economic responsibilities through working themselves, but they are not relinquishing many of their domestic responsibilities. Okay, and then just a critique of the feminists. So yes, highlights gender inequality, highlights how gender constructs can be created. And there's lots of studies to show women are contributing more domestically than men. But on the flip side of that, just like we critique the Marxists for not looking at gender inequality, feminists don't necessarily concentrate on class inequality as much. Functionalists would also argue, well, these gender roles are functional. And then the final one, I'm not really talking about the diverse family types one, I'd ignore that. The Wilmot and Young says some neo-functionalists would argue, well, there has been progress. And then don't worry about this was something we've done in class, just as a last part of the lesson. So in the next video, I'm just going to be going through the booklet, not all of it. Will be a longer video though, just going over the booklet, like give out for revision, and some of the key topics to go over.